gentlemen, welcome back to the second part of Disorderly Conduct. Don't worry, we can't hate you. And again, you guys have stuck with me here. I'm loving it. The last episode in the Lazy Fox. Thank you for coming again. Now,
we can stage a protest to keep it open.
I'll get the bricks. You brick my local, I'll brick you.
I'm just. Right? Have you guys decided if you're voting in this election yet?
Yes.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
My God, women died. Sorry, but women died so that we could vote. You know, like, so many people died so that everybody can vote. If you don't vote, you're a lazy fucker. Like,
But the thing is, I'm going to vote. I haven't decided whether or not I'm going to mark my sheet so it can be known as a default vote or a spoil vote, pardon me, yeah. Or just vote for an outside party that's not going to get anywhere, so bump their numbers up.
Well, what I want to do is throw a few issues that have come out this week and just find out, because these have been the big issues in the press. I want to find out if they're big issues for you guys, okay? SNP have been described by Theresa May as the biggest threat to UK democracy or the union since the abdication, which I don't think was a threat to the union in any way, shape or form when it happened. It was possibly a threat to the royal family.
It's just slander, you know.
And you know, is SNP a big issue for you guys at all? The press seem obsessed with it.
Like most of the Scottish people I know and spoke to, they weren't even up for the whole leaving the UK thing. Like, they actually realised that they leave the UK, they're kind of fucked, because you can't join the EU without your own independent army, and then they're going to have their own economy, their own parliament,
and currency,
run themselves into the ground.
Well, they'll allow the elites in Edinburgh to run them. But my issue, I've got issues with SNP, mostly that they're the one party they promised to deliver independence, didn't deliver independence, but they're more popular than ever before, which to me is quite, as a political thing, that's
popularity is then just an opinion of people thinking they're doing well. They weren't popular during the election.
Apparently they're going to wipe out Labour in Scotland. I mean, that's how popular they are. Labour is, without Scotland there would be no Labour Party back in the day. That's where the Labour Party originally came from.
Well,
and now
they didn't get independence, so the people who didn't vote for independence are obviously not going to be voting for SNP.
I don't know, they say they will be. A lot of people have turned. But my bigger point with it, how do you feel about the concept that in Scotland there's a population of approximately 5 million people, right? If they go into a pact with Labour, they'll be possibly propping up a Labour government. It's not definite for sure. Is it right that should be happening? I personally don't think it's right, and not because I don't like Scottish people. I love Scottish people. I've gone out with some lovely Scottish ladies, right? But is that right that should be happening in our current...
When all they have is just a veto power over some of the larger decisions?
No, they'll actually be to get a majority.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, they'll
but what I'm saying is, I'm kind of hypothesising if they did get into power and they were there, they would just have a veto power. And exactly, and in fact, it would be the larger party that would call the shots in the first place anyway, and just ignore them, so they don't have as much of a say. Yes, it might mean that they break away, but then again, who knows, who cares at this point?
Well, I think it damages our dream of democracy, because we weren't allowed to vote in the referendum, so that isn't fair for a start. The amount of money that we give to Scotland, like Scotland for example, if you go to the doctors and you have to buy a prescription, you're paying like £7 or £8 for your prescription at the least, and if you go to Scotland you have to pay anything, so I think I really don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair that everybody in our nation gets to vote at the general election, and yet we have no say in sort of Wales or Northern Ireland or Scotland, and yet they get a say in our thing. Why don't we have an independent election for people in England?
Well, I think Scotland have more of a say than any of the other devolved nations that you mentioned, basically because for some reason they have more of a financial power base. That's all it comes down to, and because
oil, isn't it?
Possibly.
People have said that, but oil, it's like the oil prices have dropped. They're bottomed out, right? It's not worth much, especially the oil I get from Scotland. It's proper crude. Needs to be processed type of stuff, right?
Proper crude.
And I just, the Scots believe that I think the Scots would be all right if they went independent. It's 5 million people. Do you know what I mean? They'd just become like Norway or something. There'd be a small economy. They'd export loads of stuff.
They'd have
education
no
would be big business. Who needs an army?
There'd be visa issues and dual passport issues for everyone who would either be living in Scotland or
they wouldn't be.
England.
You'd just carry on using your passport. It's
well, if they're not in the UK, then you're going to need a passport to travel between the two countries.
True, but even if you had to do that,
and then you're going to need a visa to be able to live there.
It would still
they're not going to be in the EU.
Still not a problem. There's lots of countries not in the EU.
Yeah, and there's still problems getting between countries.
No,
Australia isn't
just
in
come
the
to an
EU.
agreement with the
You
EU.
just pop over to Australia and live there for the rest of your life. You can't. You need to go through visa applications. So if Scotland were to go away, what would make it so easy to go into Scotland rather than go?
Well, it depends what they choose to do. Essentially, are they going to put like a
scale on how far they leave?
See, you guys said this wasn't an issue, but you've been thinking about this, and this is my whole point.
Well, I'm half Scottish, so I had to think about it throughout the whole
I think it is an
referendum.
issue.
I didn't want them to leave, but if they did, I probably would have got a dual passport.
Okay, just moving on slightly, because I think, I don't know how the election's going to play out. We're being played lots of stories by the politicians. They're saying this, they're saying that, but we don't know what's going to happen. It could end up with the Tories getting an outright victory. They're far enough ahead in the polls that they could get an outright victory at the moment. We don't know. People, we'll see what happens. But just by the way you've been watching the campaigns, have you been paying attention to it? Have you been offended? Like the Tories got offended when Ed Miliband mentioned that our foreign policy is the reason why so many migrants are trying to get into Europe. Did that offend you? Do you think he was wrong to do that? Did you even hear the story? Is more the question.
No, I didn't even hear the story. No.
He got slammed for using the crashes of the cruise ships and the ships carrying migrants, using such kind of foreign tragedy for political gain. He basically came out and said that the Tories were so shit, saying that Syria were able to kind of keep their own country afloat and just ignoring the fact that they actually do need quite a lot of fucking help. When then you had all these, what was it? How many? Is it 937 people died? Is it?
700, but there's people, just so everybody knows, there's people dying constantly. Mm-hmm. It's just this one was really big. It was a big cruise ship. It turned upside down. You've seen, if you haven't seen some of the images, you can look on the internet, people floating up on the beach and them literally being saved by Italians who were just literally there, either walking by or emergency services. It's a horrific thing, but the press, I think, talked about it for a day and left it. It's a big issue in the sense that, not that I want to go too far off track, but do we have a responsibility to these people to help them? At the moment, everybody's being quite hostile, in a way, I think quite selfish. Is it Katie Hopkins?
Oh my God.
I don't want to, hold on.
Please don't mention her, because she is
she came out and said that we should have had gunships out there stopping people from coming over.
Right, so the thing about Katie Hopkins...
a house to
hold on, Chris.
Well, I mean, I think Katie Hopkins, anybody who actually listens or prints anything that woman says is an idiot, because she's actually going to get herself into a lot of trouble, because at the moment I think I heard something about how she could be, possibly what she's saying, she could be prosecuted for supporting war crimes, crimes against humanity, and I think she's just an ignorant person who is too quick to sort of, I think it's, everybody can have a chat in a pub about something, right? But you can't go and put that on Twitter and say all of these things, especially when you're as high profile as Katie Hopkins is. God knows why she is, but she is, and she's made herself a name for being, this person who says things that people don't agree with. Yeah, controversial.
She said on this morning that she hates when kids are named after countries or flowers, and her two kids are called India and Petal, India and Rose.
But you say that
it's literally, you hate your own children.
We say that, but again, she's invited onto This Morning on a regular basis.
You have to cause controversy because it makes good television. She was on Big Brother because it made good television. Perez Hilton was on Big Brother because it made good television.
She's paid by the Sun newspaper for a column that she does every week.
Fucking Sun newspaper.
The press are always commenting on her, and I found a lot of people who hold her views. As much as I I despise the woman and think she's a numpty.
Wasn't there an article came out recently that she's actually a comedian troll, and the whole character of Katie Hopkins is totally fabricated?
Fucking hope so.
I heard that, but I don't believe it's true. I think that it's her through.
It's probably news to her anyway.
But okay, moving on. We'll moving on from that.
Please, she should be put in the same corner as UKIP.
But staying with politics.
Don't.
Ed Miliband, the Tory candidate, has apologised for saying she would never support the Jew. Now, it was Golzabeen Asfar, who is a council candidate in the ward of Little Over in Derby. In Derby. Is it Derby or Derby?
Derby.
Derby. Made the comment on Facebook. Now, I don't get what the emphasis she had on that. She doesn't give much. She's apologised for it, but she said she'd never support him because he's a Jew. Now, I didn't even know Ed Miliband was Jewish. I had no idea.
Not a clue.
Is that sort of thing important in politics?
No.
Does anybody's...
No, move on.
Because the reason why I bring this up
to the people who don't like it.
The reason why I bring it up is in the glorious USA, the home of modern democracy, the power base of freedom in this world. Their presidential elections,
Really?
their presidential elections are coming up next year, and religion seems to play a much bigger part than it does over here. If a candidate in the UK, just asking you quickly, go around the table, if somebody came in the UK came up and said, you know what, I'm religious, I believe in God, I pray every day, and it's important to me, helps in my decision making, would that affect the way you voted negatively or positively, or not at all?
No.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine that somebody, the royal family are Christian, right? That doesn't mean the whole country has to be Christian. I just think, as soon as you try to impose your own values on somebody else, you're sort of doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing everybody a disservice. So you shouldn't expect other people to have the same values as you. I haven't for a second, and I don't like Ed Miliband. I think he's an absolute idiot. Like, he looks like an idiot, and he talks like an idiot. But
don't hold back, girl. Do not hold back.
But I have not, heard about him being a Jew. Does it change? It's like saying, if one of you guys were like, "Oh, I'm gay." I wouldn't look at anybody in a different way. I don't care. Like, I've got friends who are Sikh, friends who are Muslim. No, I don't think it doesn't.
Where is the gay candidate, by the way? Why can't we vote for one?
Is Ed Miliband not gay?
No.
I thought he was gay.
I heard rumour, and it was rumour from somebody who worked very closely with the Tory party.
Well, they all went to
about 60% of MPs are actually gay.
Really?
But they will never say so.
Probably.
Why not?
They all went to Eton.
I know why not. I'm just asking as a rhetorical question.
Rhetorical? Why not? Yeah.
Because their base wouldn't accept it. About 60%. I think it's actually 60% of Tory MPs are possibly gay or bisexual.
Back to your point
never
about
know that.
Good for them.
Politics and religion.
But
as long as you don't mix the both.
Yeah. But that's unavoidable.
You can be whatever religion you want and be whatever level of
sexuality, politics and religion. Whoa, what a mix.
Well, it's like, as long as you don't have your religious kind of views. Well,
how can't you?
If you read far enough into Christianity, then you shouldn't eat pork. You shouldn't do anything.
Is that Christianity?
No.
Pork?
It's actually in the
pork's
Old Testament.
all right. In the Old Testament, but Christ said it was cool.
It's the Bible.
They're all God's creations, and you can eat them.
The same.
Yeah, but if you read Paul, then every woman is women are adulterous whores, right? And I think. I just think it's kind of, it is irrelevant. It doesn't make. I really don't give a shit if Ed Miliband is a Jew, a Christian, or is an atheist. I don't care.
Claire, just nod your head. Does it affect your voting views?
Shook her head.
And for tape, that was a shake of the head, a no.
Okay, all right, moving on.
You don't have stupid stuff to affect your political parties that have no kind of orientation and what.
I think if you're asking about that though, because there was something I heard today about should the NHS be a political thing at all? Should it be considered in politics? And I think. I just think it's like muddying the water. It gets really dangerous if you start trying to take things out of politics, because you cannot change who you are as a person. If you are born and bred like a Liberal Democrat, then the way you see the world is going to be through the eyes of a Liberal Democrat. You know, if you're born and bred a Jew, I'm sure like some of the ways that you see the world is going to be through a Jewish person's eyes.
I'll jump in there and disagree with you slightly, in the sense that I think the problem with modern politics is that people aren't as narrow in terms of their politics as they used to be. So you could be conservative and gay, and you can be a Labour and religious and Liberal Democrat and not believe in marriage equality. I think you can vote Liberal Democrat and not believe in marriage equality. I think people are a lot more individual in their views, and the problem is the parties haven't adapted to that. And that's why you've got groups like UKIP coming to the forefront. That's why you've got SNP so popular.
But then it used to be the fact that
people's views on things are different.
Two totally different sides of the spectrum.
Like what people don't know is Scotland's a very conservative country. It's actually quite conservative, but they have marriage equality, and this is a big difference between. I think it just doesn't represent people. Like I consider myself Labour, but I've got no problem with capitalism. I think it's brought a lot of good things into the world. I think corruption is a problem, which no politicians mentioned in the election so far. Corruption's a big issue for me. The NHS is a big issue for me, and education is a very, very big issue for me.
Don't throw stones in glass houses.
But you see, this is the thing for me, and I think I'm not represented by the parties. Labour's more in line with my beliefs and my approach towards democracy, but at the same time, they don't represent my views on a lot of things. I'm anti-war, but at the same time, I believe we should have a decent defence.
But I think that's why a lot of people are like, and I think James, I don't know if James said this when we were recording it or whether he said it during the break, but it's like that's why people are going to vote for the minority groups, because they're like, nobody represents me. Like I've heard people say, oh, I'm going to vote Green because I don't know who else to like vote, and I'm like, yeah, but have you actually read what the Green Party stand for? No, they don't give a shit what the Green Party stand for. All they care about is that it's not going to be one of the big three parties, and that is a problem, and I do agree with you. Well, it should be. Claire was talking about the manifesto. It should be about the manifesto. Yes, it should be Claire.
But have you read any of the manifestos though? Because it's so woolly and generalist, it doesn't actually give any hard and fast facts and figures that they're going to stick to. It's just a very kind of umbrella policies of, oh, we're going to think about doing it in this way.
Let's not kid ourselves. The Green Party are never, ever, 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 ever going to be in a position of power, and I think that's the problem, isn't it? You know, like
ignorant to all the.
But that's the problem. Like everybody I've spoken to is like, oh, I hate Ed Miliband, he's such an idiot. Oh, I don't like David Cameron because he's like a toff. Oh, I don't like Nick Clegg because he fucked up the students.
But I think Claire actually makes a good point in the fact that it should be based on policy. It should actually be based on policy. But the problem is we're not told about any policies. And the weirdest thing, I never thought I'd ever say this, is in that first political election debate, the only person that seemed to give some statistics and some specific policy in there was Nigel Farage.
Yeah, but his statistics were still quite dodgy. I don't want to discuss UKIP because I keep getting into arguments with people about it. Their statistics are based on false information and lies. So when they say that we'll stop, one of the things he keeps saying is we'll stop foreign aid.
Yeah,
and we'll put that money into this. I'm like, it simply will not work that way. And it's like saying, you can say you're going to put that money into that, but that money you're literally talking about stopping any foreign aid. So development aid, you're talking about disaster aid, you're talking about all of that type of stuff. And I don't think
cool. So let's take that a step further. Nigel Farage is probably only there to be a dissenting voice to destabilise what is currently in place, because there is no way that the Green Party, UKIP, SNP or Plaid Cymru are ever really going to have any real or devolved power of any sort. It is always going to still sit between the three main parties, and the thing is, it's going to be so fragmented, we're not going to know if we're left or right or whatever, because we're heading towards a conservative Labour government, a coalition. I really believe we are.
I completely.
Why?
Because I think SNP does have real power, and I think that the smaller parties could do. With our current political system, it's harder for them unless the big parties go, we go into coalition with you. but they do have power, and this is why UKIP's still here. God, I said it again. This is why UKIP's still here, because they've got power of opinion. And in our current age of the internet, that counts for a lot. The fact that the Tories are going, come back to us, UKIP supporters, we'll give you this, we'll get more border guards, we'll do that, we'll do this. They do have power. They just don't have elected power yet, but they do have a lot of power. UKIP has terrified the major parties. Terrified them. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about a bunch of people who came out saying stuff like, you know, there's a massive international conspiracy of Jews. They deny the Holocaust. They think that...
Who does? UKIP?
UKIP supporters have done it on many occasions. They'll come out and say, you know, they'll come out and make claims about people based on race. They made that big claim that the Romanians were going to come over here and take over the country. Didn't happen. You know, the Polish king offered Nigel Farage out for a fight, a duel. Do you know what I mean? They say they're crazy, they attract crazy, their policies don't add up, their maths don't add up, and I've had these arguments before.
Okay, that's fine.
Well.
But
the uneducated voter.
I completely disagree with that.
But everyone I know who have said that, they sound like they have like some type of basis of literally they've then followed it like, well, I have no idea who to vote for.
No, I think.
But my kind of the things they like, where like it's just really stupid, unfathomable things that they're promising.
The thing about UKIP, right, is that it appeals to some, because I know, you know, people of my parents' age, like people who live where my parents do. A lot of people did vote for UKIP at the local elections, and that was mainly because they're like, you know, Nigel Farage is like, oh, well, the Romanians are taking everybody's jobs, and there is an element of truth. There are a lot of people who are immigrants who are now working in low-paid positions. Now, I know, to me, I know what that is. They're working in low-paid positions because a lot of people who are on benefits would rather stay on benefits than actually go out and be a cleaner, for instance. And, you know, this world can't function without the people who are in the low-paid jobs, and that's fine. So I think, you know, Nigel Farage is appealing to that. He's like, you know, oh, it's not right, you know, they're taking jobs. And people, instead of like sort of looking into it and thinking about it, they're like, well, actually, yeah, that's true. You know, so things he's saying. And the same thing with Katie Hopkins as well. It's like things she says, right? Some of the things she says, people do think. Like, some people do think, oh, you know, if you name your child Tyler, it makes them sound common. But the thing is, right, that they don't then listen to everything else because they don't care about the rest of the man.
Things that everything underneath, everything that everybody's saying is just not told, and we don't know about it, and we have no access to that information. It's like, okay, what are the specific statistics of the NHS in Hammersmith and Fulham? You know, who goes in, who comes out, you know, what are the waiting times, what is all that stuff? Not a clue. And why don't we know those basic fundamental local policies?
Because British voters are lazy, and I say this with absolute. Hold on, let me come in with this. The one thing I've encountered with UKIP supporters again and again and again, you can Google the information they want, right? They do not. What UKIP's been very, very good at is making a statement about something and nobody checks it. Not even the big parties are checking it, and you know why? Because even if you tell the British public the truth, it's what their opinions tell them. The belief that people on benefits don't want to work. The belief that the majority of money goes towards the majority of money goes on benefits. The belief that immigrants are coming in here taking their jobs. The belief that being a member of the EU's made this country weaker. People don't check the facts because they don't want to hear the truth. It's like a Top Gear viewer. You know,
then what the hell are we talking about? That's my point, really, is we're kind of fluffing around the top of, you know, Katie Hopkins and Farage and, you know, only the afro.
So like Farage will say, immigrants are coming to take our jobs. Or you could say, actually,
or you could say, these are
statistics. The jobs that no one else is doing. Like, a lot of the jobs that a lot of these immigrants are going in, like lower class or middle class English people who have no work, who are on the dole, they don't want to do that job.
Can I just say that also isn't true? Because a lot of the jobs, again, NHS jobs, they're nurses, they're doctors, they're jobs that you need to train for years, and we don't have people trained up for it. Their jobs are like underground jobs, they're jobs jobs. They're doing jobs that are available that certain people can do, and certain people are trained to do. And they come from abroad to do these jobs. Employers are asking for people from abroad to come over. It got mixed up with the immigration issue, and not just the immigration issue, the illegal immigration issue, which needs to be treated as a separate issue. What UKIP's done is bundled it all into one, and they can literally blame foreigners for everything that goes wrong in this country.
Who comes over here, works legally, don't care.
I think the word immigrant is misleading as well, though, because I think it does carry this connotation, which...
Well, somebody did an article saying why are immigrants that come here called immigrants and British people that go abroad expats. That's what it is. It's an attitude that there's something wrong with foreigners. And what makes it worse is that if you read a history book, if people read history books, UKIP wouldn't have any support. Do you know what I mean? It's like
people read history books. None of the main parties would have any support. That's the problem here, because we don't know the truth behind it all, and
we choose not to find out.
We choose not to find. No, we do want to find out. We just don't know how, and we don't think we can find out how.
I think you do, and I think all of us sit around the table are quite interested in this. But I think the general population actually don't care. They're like, how is this going? How is this particular party going to support my little world that I live in, which is, my house and my garden and my friends and my family and what I do for a day-to-day living. People don't care.
So it's apathy, and everybody's a NIMBY. It's like, if it's not in my backyard, then I don't need to worry about it.
I think so, honestly, because I don't think that... Do we actually care about waiting times in the NHS unless... The only time people talk about that, right, is if they've gone to the A&E and they've had to wait for 4 hours. They're like, this is disgraceful, this is awful. If you haven't been to A&E and you haven't had a family member who's ill, then you're just like, you're blissfully unaware of it, and you don't actually care because it's not affecting you. And I know it sounds bad, but I think that's the truth.
I think a big reason as well is in the UK you don't have to vote. And I take a country like Australia, where it's against the law not to vote. You have to vote in your election, and that actually makes a lot more people have a lot more of an investment into the politics.
But again, let me jump in there.
They actually care more about the politics and actually look into it more because they have to vote. They're not just going to waste a vote that they have to do.
But again, let me jump in there and say, look, Australia can run a system like that because it's got a population of about 20 million people. It is a tiny population compared to the UK.
And how big is Australia compared to the UK landmass-wise?
You could run a system like that
in the way of mining and all this stuff.
Yeah, but Australia's also got some of the most corrupt politics in the world. They've got their current leader is a guy that he's like George Bush's clone.
None of the Australians like him.
As much as it's making people vote isn't going to improve democracy. Information and getting people involved will improve.
Not forcing people, but the fact that they have to vote means they actually put a bit more effort into learning about the politics. But I know a lot of people my age and younger and a little bit older where they literally have no interest in learning about any type of politics and they just won't vote.
Yeah, but like I said, they've got Australia has a buffoon in charge. You can talk about it's more about engaging people in democracy. We don't do that here. They don't particularly do it in Australia. They've only got a two-party system over there anyway. There's literally only two parties that anybody votes for. It's not the same as here. We've got loads of different parties, but people still aren't voting. And it's not because you need to force them to vote. It's because you need to engage them more. And not one of the parties does that. They all go for a smaller and smaller voting base. And I don't think they care. I don't think they care because they know whether it's Labour or Conservative, they'll still have power. Do you know what I mean? Those MPs are still going to they'll get voted in, the ones in there, they'll still have their jobs, their pensions, their flights to foreign countries to drum up trade. They'll still get the meet the Queen.
There has to be a revolution in how we govern ourselves. That's the problem here.
I was about to say, what, a non-violent...
Well, hey, why not a non-violent revolution? But nobody knows how to do it, and everybody's scared to do it in the first place. Definitely would have to be non-violent, but we have to have a fundamental change and shift in the way that we decide to have things done and why we have them done. And we need to become more informed. It needs a total, not just top down, it's bottom up, and change it right from the bottom.
Well, you've got a political system that's been there for how many years? And
I think James should start his own party.
It was created
It's funny you should mention that. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have to bring this show to a close. We've rolled, we've rocked, we've debated the issues. I'll see if we can do some more stuff later on. I don't know. But as it stands, that was a nice way to end it, James. Come the revolution, people. Thank you very much for coming, guys.
Beyond the barricade.
Last days of the Lazy Fox.
UKIP.
Guys, say goodnight, please.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Cheerio.
This was Disorderly Conduct, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.